Good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock and we've got a good crowd, a few people still trickling in right now. But we can get started with the presentation, and this presentation will be uploaded onto the website after we're finished with it as well. So if you missed anything along the way or want to share it with somebody else, please feel free to do so. My name is Alan Dybing. I'm a researcher at the Everglades Plains Transportation Institute, and I'm joined by Brad Wentz, Director of the ATAC and DOTC programs, as well as Kelly Bengtson, who is our pavement and bridge engineer. And we're going to give an overview of the update to the statewide county, township, and tribal road and bridge needs study. So the purpose of this presentation is to give you an overview of the study process and what the changes for 2024 are this year. Review the draft report results with jurisdictions prior to the legislative presentation, and also to talk about the comment process on the study and provide information on the timeline of where we go from here. And the draft report is posted on our webpage, and I'll show you at the end of the presentation exactly where to find it. It's pretty easy to find. But I should have mentioned that at the very beginning, if you look at the top of your Teams window, there's a button that says chat. If you have any questions along the line, please just type them into chat and be watching that, and we can stop and answer the question along the line. And we should have a little bit of time afterwards for questions as well. So the outline of presentation, really just first to talk about the study objective and the team here at UGPTI that's working on it. Next, to go through some study components, including the forecasting, the gravel, pavement, and bridge analysis, and then finally wrap up with some initial results. And then, as I mentioned before, the future timeline and the comment process. So where do we go from today till the final report? The objective is to estimate the funding needs to maintain the existing road and bridge system over the next 20 years for county, township, and tribal jurisdictions. And this is directed by the North Dakota legislature, so the report will be published on a website and for their use following that period. We have a large team here at UGPTI that works on the study, including our director, Denver Tolliver, myself, Brad, and Kelly. Doug Benson worked on the bridge analysis, and Sherzad and Sharma on the pavement, both in the data collection and the paved analysis as well. So I mentioned earlier, there's a number of different components to this study, and these are the major areas here. First is a traffic model, and we'll cover that in the next couple of slides. And this is key to modeling the needs into the future because the pavement needs and gravel needs are sensitive to changes in traffic. For the unpaved or gravel needs estimation and costing process. Again, this is based, as previous studies, on a survey of county and townships, as well as the traffic volumes. And this is usually a large component of the study. In the previous studies, about 60% of the total needs. Next, the pavement model and cost projection, which I'll hand over to Brad here in a few minutes to cover that. Similar process, it's dependent upon good data, both in what we collect in terms of pavement condition, but also the data that the counties enter into the Geographic Roadway Information Tool, or GRIT. And we use that data directly in terms of the pavement deterioration models and the needs estimates. Next, the bridge model and the cost projection. A lot of the data for the bridges comes from the National Bridge Inventory, and that's for structures that are greater than a 20-foot span. And in previous studies, we've had a lot of comments for what about the bridges that are less than a 20-foot span, which are classified as minor structures. And in previous studies, we haven't looked at the needs of them primarily because the data availability, simply put, the data wasn't available. So we've done a lot of legwork, and Kelly has done a lot of legwork as well on collecting data to update this. So that's new for this study, is the inclusion of needs for the minor structures. First off, in the components of the study, the traffic forecasting. Roadway impacts, whether paved or gravel, are dependent upon traffic levels. So as traffic increases on unpaved or gravel roads, requires more frequent blading, more frequent and thicker gravel overlays, and depending upon the location and the total volume of traffic, dust suppressant usage or base stabilization. For paved roads, the pavement design is based upon the projected equivalent single axle loads. So that's a measure of pavement damage typically related to axle weights. And the higher the easels, the thicker the pavement will be, and the quicker the deterioration on that paved road will occur. So to estimate and forecast traffic into the future, we developed a travel demand model. And since the focus of this study is county, township, and tribal roads, we focused and have in previous studies on agricultural and oil-related data for forecasting truck volumes for those groups over the next 20 years. From the ag industry, the agricultural production, we looked at National Ag Statistics data, as well as the grain movement database from the Department of Agriculture. And for oil, we worked with Lynn Helms and Justin Kringstead from the Industrial Council to develop forecasts of development in the future. And essentially, we then model traffic across the state and compare that against observed traffic counts and calibrate the model based upon observed counts. And here, we won't go through all of these individually, but on ag, we have 9 separate individual commodities that are modeled. The 3 big in terms of the crops, corn, wheat, and soybeans. And then at the very bottom, we have sugar beets and potatoes, which the geographic area in North Dakota of those production of those commodities are relatively small, but there is significant local impacts that we've modeled as well. On the oil side of things, we looked at all the inputs to the exploration and production as well as the outbound. And again, the models were then combined to get the total traffic and compared against the traffic counts. And this is just a quick map of all the counts that were included in the study. And the blue dots represent volume count, so that's the total number of vehicles over that account location. And the red dots represent classification counts, which will tell us whether it's cars versus trucks, single unit versus multiple unit trucks. So in terms of the first set of analysis here, the unpaved or gravel, to simplify it, we assign maintenance costs based upon traffic level categories. And we do the cost estimation based upon a survey of costs and practices, which has been developed and improved over the course of the recent studies using a steering committee of county and townships. And in this survey, the counties are asked how roads are maintained differently based upon traffic levels. So they're telling us essentially how they treat their roads differently based upon traffic. The survey includes a number of major areas. First, in terms of the aggregate, what type of aggregate, using specifications or testing in that aggregate. The big one, the unit costs. How much are you paying per yard or per ton for gravel? Blading costs, and also the hauling costs. And depending upon the county, that hauling cost is a significant component. You could have relatively cheap, low cost gravel per yard, but if it's located on the other side of the county, then the freight in many cases is higher than the actual cost of the gravel itself. Overlay thickness and frequency. So how often do you apply a gravel overlay, and how many inches of gravel do you do when the overlay is applied? And also how they vary at different traffic levels. Same thing for blading frequency. How many times a month do you blade the road, and how does this vary at different traffic levels? Whether the county uses dust suppressant or stabilization and the costs associated with that. So the gravel survey was mailed to all 53 counties and roughly 1,300 townships across the state. And this year we got 52 out of 53 counties responded, 98%, and just a little over half of the townships responded. So we had a lot of data that went into this study. And just one of the data items here is mentioned the cost of aggregate per cubic yard. This map just represents some variations across the state, and I always have to point out Trail here because theirs is high, but the way their gravel is reported includes the freight from the shipment, so theirs is higher compared to the rest because the transportation cost is included in there. But you can see we have some regional clustering of higher gravel prices and lower prices in different parts of the state. But we also use this map to kind of I guess further clarify on why we use the county-specific data, because each county is facing different cost characteristics as well as different maintenance practices. Some counties will say they'll blade twice a month. Others will tell us if they'll blade once it rains. So the practices based upon the soil type, the traffic, and the requirements of the county will change. So we use the direct practices and costs that are reported by the counties for estimating the needs. The survey results are used to calculate an average annual cost per mile by traffic level. And again, just talking about, they account for regional variations in costs and maintenance practices. And then we group the miles in each county by traffic levels, 5 different categories from very high to very low. And, one county's high traffic level, maybe another county's low, depending upon the activity, particularly out in oil country where there are a lot higher volumes on gravel roads. And then in each of these categories, we apply an annualized cost each traffic level, and then sum up the mileages across the jurisdiction to come up with the estimates. And a real quick overview, we'll cover the results at the tail end of the presentation. For the current biennium, statewide for unpaved roads, $708 million. And over the 20-year study period, we're looking at $6.9 billion. So that's a quick overview of the unpaved, and I'll turn it over now to Brad for the pavement analysis.
Thank you, Al. And I'm going to go through the pavement analysis that we did for the need study. There's kind of three components that I'm covering here: the data collection, and then the data analysis, and the pavement results. Data collection is kind of a big important item so that we make sure we are getting good recent data, so that can be input into the data analysis in our models. We collect pavement condition data, and then, as Al mentioned, we use a tool called GRIT, Geographic Roadway Inventory tool, so that the counties can enter in their information regarding structural data and information that would be input into the model that we cannot collect. And then the other big one is traffic data and getting those easels, or equivalent single axle loads, accurately as a starting point for the model so that we can project them into the future. The data analysis is really based on an AASHTO 93 design equation that we use to predict what the future condition will be, and then we take into account the costs, and then lastly I'll cover the pavement results. So the big one is pavement condition data that we need to get a real-time snapshot of what that is recently. So in 2023, well, in 2022 and 2023, we collected pavement condition data using students that we have in our DOTC program and ATAC program. This year was a little bit different in that we purchased a new portable profiler, and this is a upgraded profiler that's laser-based, and it has GPS. It more accurately measures the roughness of the road. In the past, we would use smartphone devices and a program called Road Bump, which did a good job of measuring it, but it's not quite as accurate as it's using just the accelerometer within the smartphone to measure how rough the road is. The picture on the right shows the portable profiler. It's just mounted on the back of a vehicle and can be taken on and off. And pretty easily we can cover the state with that system. And we collected the entire state in 22 and 23. Just the northeast corner was done with Road Bump in 2022, and then in 2023 we covered the whole state with a profiler. But when we collected with a profiler, we also included the Road Bump device in there so that we could do a calibration, so that we could calibrate the 2022 Road Bump data up to the similar results that we were getting with the new profiler. We also collected images every 500 feet with a camera and an application that we have in the vehicle. And then this year or last year, we also included a GoPro 360 on the vehicle. You can see that mounted at the top of the vehicle, which provides continuous images along each road that we collect. And then that data is going to be posted to Google Street View. So then you'll be able to see that within the GRIT programs when they're using it as a backdrop. Basically, you can look any direction and zoom down the road to look at the current image data. I got a delay in my forward button here, but there we go. So with that pavement condition data, this is just a map kind of depicting what some of the results were with that data. There's pie charts included on this. It's for the whole county, and then the lines indicate the roads and what condition they're in. Red being poor, fair being orange, and good being green. And then the color shaded of the county is the pavement miles in those counties. So the dark counties have a lot of pavement miles, and the lighter ones are less mileage. And that'll be consistent on the rest of the maps. But you can see here there, when we get into the counties that have a lot of miles, it's a little more distributed between the good, fair, and poor. And you can see in the western part of the state where there's been more recent construction over the last 10 years that there's a bit more in the good condition, good and fair. And then central part of the state, maybe there hasn't been quite as much construction going on over the last years, and there's more into the fair and poor categories than that. These maps are all posted to our website, so I know there's not time to really make any sense of these right now, but you can go to the website and pull these up and look at individual counties if you want to. So the other thing we need to have is a pavement subgrade strength, and there are some cases where we don't have enough information in grit to determine that. And so then we go back to some data collection that we did in 2015 as a subgrade strength probably hasn't changed much since then, unless there was a new construction project, in which case we would have that information in grit. So we fill in where we don't have enough information on that from that older FWD data that we collected. And then the next part is the geographic roadway inventory tool. And that is a tool. It's a really easy to use web-based inventory tool. It's available and used by all the North Dakota counties. And we have 4 layers of information in there. The big one we're using for the needs study is the construction history, but also for the county's planning purposes, there's a construction planning layer. There's a minor structures layer, which Kelly will talk about a little bit later. And then load restrictions are available in the grid system. So from grid, what we really need from the counties and what we get from them is the information to determine the structural number, basically the strength of the roadway. And that's the construction history layer. In there we have pavement thickness and type of pavement, base thickness and type, subgrade strength, pavement age. And all those things are used to calculate the strength of the structural number or the strength of the roadway. And then we also collect shoulder type and width. That's also used in some of the determinations of projects. I'm just going to go through a couple maps here that show some of that data that we collected. Again, these are going to be available or are available on our website to take a look at in a little more detail. But this first one is the easel map. The red being very high easels. Once we get up to over 1 million easels, that's a lot of truck traffic on the road, and so those are shown in red. You can see in oil country there's quite a bit more of those types of roads. And then the second map here is the structural number. Again, this is kind of the strength of the roadway, and it's taken from the grid information. The red in this case is showing the pretty low structural numbers. So if you have a really low structural number and really high traffic, that road is going to probably need to have some reconstruction on it soon. And so that span it forward. The next one, shoulder width data, and this is what we use to kind of look at, do we need to do a widening on the road if there isn't enough room to do a overlay on it, because that requires additional shoulder width to fit that pavement on there. then we select it for our widening project. There's some roads in here that indicate no data. Again, we get this from the grid information, and if counties haven't put in their shoulder width information, then we need to make an assumption that the shoulder width is adequate on those roadways. So the pavement data analysis on then is we're using an AASHTO 93 pavement design model. The inputs for that we need to have are the pavement condition, or PSR, pavement serviceability rating, and that gives us the initial pavement condition of the road, the cumulative ESOLs, truck traffic, the structural number, roadway strength, and the subgrade strength or resilient modulus, and then shoulder width. And all those inputs, they get plugged into the model. I'm not going to show the equation or the math or anything here for time purposes, but based on all those inputs, we predict the future condition of the roadways and select projects for each of the next 20 years. So every year it runs a calculation going out 20 years and determines what the condition will be and what projects will be needed. And then we have to apply payment cost to that to get the total needs. And so we're showing here, bituminous overlay is around 200,000 to 550,000 per mile. Total reconstruction about 1.75 million per mile. Mine and blend or reclamation is about 840,000 per mile. And then widening overlay adds about 108,000 per foot width of overlay. And then concrete pavement repair is about 560,000 per mile. These are based on looking at bid projects recently in North Dakota on county roads, and then also looking at the Federal Highway Construction Cost Index to determine how much they went up from previous costs that we used in past need studies. And then this is kind of the final result, looking at the shaded counties in this case are indicating the pavement cost in millions, and the project type is listed in based on the colors noted there, with the black being the overlay and reconstruction being red. And then looking at the table for the final results, is shown here with a total of about 3.5 billion over the 20 years. This table is breaking out the different types of construction and then by decade. And I highlighted the area in blue just to show that in the first decade, 24 to 23, when we were looking at reconstruction, in particular widening, mine and blend, those types of projects, we have a lot more of those in the beginning part of the study in the first decade, and that's basically catching up to roads that have deteriorated too far where they cannot have a resurfacing project on them or an overlay. So we're taking care of those, and then you can see in the next decade that those numbers go down a lot, because that's kind of how our model works. It's selecting an overlay project or maintenance or rehabilitation project before it needs that more expensive reconstruction type projects. So we don't get a lot of reconstruction towards the last half of the study. And that is it for the pavement section. I'm going to forward on to Kelly.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Alan, you're gonna turn control over, then I can advance these slides.
Yep, it should work right now, Kelly.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Okay, well, I'm Kelly Bankson. I work at Great Plains Transportation Institute, and I worked a significant amount of time on the bridge analysis for the 20-year need study report that is just coming out now this week. So I'll talk to you next about the cost model development, how the data was collected, some of the decision flow charts that we use, and talk about the major structures, and then of course the new minor structures as well. So that's kind of exciting that we've got minor structures here this year. So Okay, so on the minor structures need costs, the costs are up significantly since the last study, about 41% increase. You know, the previous study had bridge costs of $370 per square foot. Now we're looking at $530. Maintenance costs, we based that on the National Highway Construction Cost Index for all of the general construction components, and that was 16%. So maintenance costs are up from 30 to 35 cents per square foot for the off-system bridges and up to 40 cents square foot now on the on-system bridges. And then the box culverts followed suit with the major bridge structures coming in about 41% higher. So what was in the previous study for a double box culvert, the number was 630 or was 450,000. Now it's 635, and you can see the increases for the multiple boxes as well. So the box culvert guideline is if it's a bridge that has a span of 20 to 40 feet, then we're assuming we're going to put a double box culvert in there. And if the span is larger than that, we're looking at multiple boxes up in the bridge range of 40 to 50 foot spans. There was one reduction, which is kind of unusual, of course, but the bridge length factor was reduced from 1.8 to 1.7. And what that means is the last study we used 1.8, and that's the old bridge length versus the new bridge length. And the majority of these, of course, the new structure is always longer because of instability in the banks of the water that it's bridging. And then major culvert bridges that have replacement needs are added in manually because the SAS code that we're using to look at the deterioration modeling of the major structures does not take into consideration criteria for buried structures. So the major culverts are included, and that was new in the last study 2 years ago. So we're continuing that. So the major structures, like Al said, these are bridges that are greater than 20 feet in span. We look at the National Bridge Inventory. This is where all of the North Dakota bridge inspection data is sent into Federal Highway and then is posted on a public site. It's called the National Bridge Inventory. So we started out looking at 2,795 structures. 17 of these were culvert structures, so those were included manually. And to qualify, they had to have a traffic count of greater than 50. And then the structures on minimum maintenance roads were excluded, and I believe there was about 179 of those that were excluded. There's some city bridges that are included. Barnes County and Stutzman County have city bridges under their jurisdiction. So I want to thank Brian Fuchs for pointing that out, and those are included in the analysis. Okay, the NBI also allows you to create some graphs to analyze data in general, and this graphic is from that site, and it just shows the trend of the number or percentage of bridges in fair condition passing the number of bridges in good condition on the North Dakota local system. And that began in 2020, and you can see that trend is continuing today. And of course, the bridges in poor condition is ramping up as well. And then this is a pie chart of pretty much the same data. 41% of the bridges are in good condition, 45% in fair. So here again, the fair bridges are exceeding the percentage of good bridges, and then 14% in poor condition. So the results of the major structures in general, there's 847 major structures that are eligible for replacement needs, and this is up from the previous study, which had 698 major structures drawing replacement needs. And the maintenance needs for the new report is coming in at the bridge needs, including maintenance for replacement and maintenance, is coming at $1.087 billion. which is up from $715 million in the last study report. Next, we'll touch base with the minor structures. So the primary source of data was the 1985 North Dakota DOT inventory. And it was an old version on green and white printer paper, so we had to actually put it into an Excel spreadsheet. And then we were able to import that data into GRIT. We had some meetings with the Bridge Steering Committee, which is comprised of about 10 county superintendents and county engineers around the state of North Dakota. And it was decided to go with a span of 8 to 20 feet for structures to qualify for review in the minor structure needs analysis. So this data was then imported into GRIT. Counties were asked to go into GRIT and approve these structures to determine if it was still there, is it still in service, what condition is it in, how old is it, verify the size of it, things like this. So we did create a tutorial video last fall. The data was imported into GRIT in the spring of 2023, and there was quite a bit of information sent out to the counties to go in and do these approvals. So if the conditions were reported as fair or less, then it was going to be eligible for replacement. If no conditions were reported, then the replacement determinations were based on the age of the structure. So the minor structure cost model, and I want to thank Brian Fuchs for helping out with the cost model on this as well from North Dakota LTAP. The structures are broken down into 3 size ranges. We have the 8 to 11 foot span, the 11 to 15, and the 15 to 20 foot span. The steering committee also targeted a 50 square foot waterway opening as a minimum criteria to go along with these span ranges of 8 to 20 feet. And costs were based on the North Dakota DOT price sheet list. And we also looked at some actual construction project deliveries. We got some input from some of the county superintendents and county engineers that were on the Bridge Steering Committee. So the cost ranges came in as shown here in the $304,000 to $600,000 range for those 3 categories based on size. And then the decision flow chart is set up here, so you can see the breakdown of the 3 different size categories, and then the conditions of fair or less, indicating it's going to draw needs if it's in those conditions. And if we didn't have a condition code, then we're looking at age. And we had ages in the North Dakota DOT 1985 inventory, so that helped significantly because a lot of the structures people just didn't have time to get out there and determine the conditions of those. So I'm thinking that that's probably a work in progress. So this needs study for the minor structures has got a lot of decisions based on age. So if the structure is timber and greater than 40 years old, or if it's steel and greater than 50 years old, and if it's concrete and greater than 70 years old, then it falls into the replacement status for needs purposes. And in looking at age on this pie chart, the thing that really stands out here is that 70% or 53% of these structures are 70 years old or more. So there's a lot of old minor structures out there in the 8 to 20 foot span range that are in status of needing a replacement. So the results overall indicate 1,734 minor structures eligible for replacement. I believe we started out with a little over 3,000 that fit into the 8 to 20 foot range, so we're looking at around 50%. And $812 million when you include the maintenance needs. So the grand total major and minor structure needs for the local bridges is $1.899 billion. So with that, I'll turn it back to Al and he'll do a summary and wrap it up. Thank you.
Yeah, so to bring all these pieces together, this table, it's pretty busy, and there'll be more detail in the report as well. We have it broken out by biennium for the first 5 biennia, and then 2034 to 43 is the next 10-year period. And really the bottom line is the 2024 to 2043. That's the 20-year estimated needs. And unpaved represents just short of $7 billion of the total of $12.3 billion. Paved represents 3.5 billion. Bridges just over $1 billion. Minor structures $805 million. And there's some variations from year to year. And as Brad mentioned earlier, there's a little bit of backlog in terms of the paved roads. So those needs decrease over time. Gravel is relatively consistent. And the bridges, because of the initial backlog on most of them, is distributed evenly over the first number of biennium, in kind of under the assumption that even if the funding was available, it would take that long to repair those bridges and replace those that needed to be done. So in comparison to the previous study, the column right here represents the results from the previous study, which is also on our website. 6.5 billion for unpaved roads, up to 6.9 this year, increased to 7.14%. Paved is up by 6.2%, and bridges is in terms of percentage increases, is a large increase. And Kelly explained primarily because the cost per square foot, that's really the driver right there. Minor structures, that it's new for this study, so there's no previous comparison. So the bottom line here is that the needs have increased over the last study by 17.56%. Of course, that's the inclusion of the minor structures in there as well as the significant increase in the bridge costs. This map presents the total projected costs, and this is available also on our website along with additional maps here. And the pie chart essentially breaks up the needs by category. So tan represents gravel roads, black represents paved roads. The red is the bridge cost, and the orange or yellow, depending upon your screen, is the minor structures. The darker the county is, the higher the needs, and the larger the size of the pie, the higher the needs. So this is available on the website right now as well. So the draft report's going to go up here in just a little bit. We have to make just 1 or 2 additional updates to it, and we'll have that on our website. And then also there once the report is up, then the comment period begins. So encourage everyone to review the report and submit any comments or questions to us at ndsu.roadneeds@ndsu.edu. And the website for that is ugpti.org/downloads/road_needs. And then the comment period is open until September 15th. And based upon the comments, we'll make updates or changes to the report. And then October 1st, we plan to publish the final report on our websites, and the results will be then communicated to the legislature. And on our website, if you just go to ugpti.org, in the upper right-hand corner, you can see the assessment of ND county and local road needs. And that'll take you to this page here. And right in the center will be the view the draft study report. And then right below that is the view the supplemental information. And for example, that county by county needs map that was just a few slides ago, that in addition to all of the maps in terms of pavement conditions that Brad had presented earlier are shown there as well. So the report should be up in the next couple of hours up there for review. And also then the link to the comment email address, ndsu.roadneeds, is right there. So you can just click through there and submit any comments or any questions that you might have. So with that, we've got a few minutes. If there's any questions, please type them into the chat box. And if not, feel free to leave and enjoy the rest of the day. So give it a couple of minutes to see if there's any questions. Then additionally too here, That's my phone number there, 231-5988. So if any questions, rather covered by a phone, just give me a call at that number as well. Yeah, we'll give her one more minute and see, the participants are starting to go down. So if there are any questions, just type them in. And I guess if we have a few counties still on the line here, or townships, that thank you for the input, both in terms of the surveys and all the data that you enter into GRIT as well. And because that GRIT data particularly is invaluable to this study, as well as just keeping a tab on the overall system condition across the state and the structure as well. So, okay, it appears there's no questions. So we'll end the webinar, and thank you and have a good day.
Hold on, Al. Hold on.
We got one? Okay, can shoulder width, Paul Bjornson, can shoulder width still be added as a comment, and would it affect the report? Brad.
Shoulder width can always be added if you go into GRIT at any time. And then we usually runs up until this draft copy. So likely it wouldn't change for this study, but it would definitely update for the next one. So yeah, I would suggest to get it in, but it may not make it into the final results, and it may not have any impact anyway, because we make pretty good assumptions on where they're at if they don't have anything in GRIT.
Okay, thank you and have a good day.